Let's bring in Hao Hong now, Managing Partner and CIO at Lotus Asset Management. How great to have you on the programme. Do the July numbers tell you that deflation remains a problem for China's economy, or are we seeing tentative signs of some stabilisation?
Thanks for having me. Well, I think no one should be too surprised to see deflationary pressure continue to persist in the coming future, right? So, this is because the property market is still falling. July property sales is particularly bad, and also the property price continue to fall, especially in the second and third tier cities. So, because of such detriment to household balance sheet, people are choosing to save their money rather than to spend. So if you look at the first half, right, so, in the banking system, you're seeing savings deposits has been rising, especially fixed term deposits. The deposits with term that is more than 1 year is actually rising substantially faster, and also the household debt, household borrowing is actually declining. This is probably first time in history we're seeing household credit is actually declining in China. So I would say that people are not in the mood to spend, and the deflationary pressure will persist.
How long for? How long then is the path out of deflation, and does it require yet stronger stimulus, and what form should it take?
Yeah, well, I think the government is trying to do a lot of things. For example, recently we've have the child subsidy, to give newborns 300 yuan a month, 3,600 yuan a year, and also the government is trying to shore up the social security system, and also give free preschool education to kids as well. So those are a very good policy move, but then at the same time, it's probably not going to address the problem in the near term, which is the consumption intention is being dragged down by the property sector. So in the first half of this year, the government had been handing out national subsidies for people to buy electronics, and also cash for clunkers for people to buy cars. But by now, the 200 billion also national subsidies has mostly been spent. So we're waiting for new consumption subsidies to come in to boost the second half consumption.
What is all this telling us about underlying confidence among Chinese consumers?
Yeah, I think ever since the COVID lockdown, right? So the consumer confidence has been down at a historical low level, and has not recovered at all, right? So this is because if you look at the unemployment figure, which is going to be released this week, you probably wouldn't be too surprised to see persisting unemployment pressure, especially among the Chinese younger people. So I would say that it takes time. It's been more than 2 years now since the lockdown, and we're still not seeing the confidence recovering just yet.
I want to pick up on that last point, which I feel is critical. I'm glad you raised it. What then is the leadership and policymakers doing in terms of the pace of structural reform aimed at job creation, aimed at affordable housing and the ageing population? Because it's resolving those issues that will ultimately, in the longer term, lead to confidence among consumers.
Yeah, yes? I think, yes. Well, right now we have this new term called anti-involution, which is trying to get rid of the ultra-competitive price competition in the upstream sector. But then at the same time, if you look at the downstream sectors, for example, the internet platforms, right? So the food delivery giants, they are engaging price wars as well. People at one stage were able to drink milk bubble tea for free in China, right? So for a couple of days. So this kind of price competition is extremely unhealthy. Nobody is making any money out of it. I think the government is trying to correct that, but for some reason in the Politburo meeting that is ended end of last month, for some reason, the anti-involution term was not mentioned, and also the term property was not mentioned either. Yes. So it's puzzling. It's puzzling to see, these two important sort of campaigns that is being dropped from the meeting statement. So yeah, we're puzzled and we're still waiting to see what's going to come out. In August, this is the month for Beidaihe retreat. So hopefully some policy news will come out after this month.
So dare I say it, on the policy front, Beijing is really just scratching the surface, if not clutching at straws here. Anti-involution clearly is not really working, and it requires an entirely different approach, a bolder approach. What should that be, Hao?
Yeah, well, if you look at the manufacturing sector, right? So the manufacturing sector is going like full steam, right? So Chinese export has been really strong, even going to July, before the August 12th deadline. This is because during the COVID period, in order to sustain economic growth, China actually put in a lot of investments in many of the so-called new high-tech industries. For example, EVs, solar panels, batteries, and all that. Right. So by now, because of those investments, China was able to register, 5% or around 5% growth during the COVID period. But then now we're dealing with the excess capacity, because we just invested too much. And this time is quite different from 2016, the supply side reform, in the sense that back then, we're trying to get rid of the so-called outdated excess capacity. But right now, the capacity was only built a few years ago. And this, is by no means excess and outdated capacities. And so I think, the government is trying to come up with some new solution. But right now, we don't think the policy is working just yet.
How we're bumping up against the trade truce deadline tomorrow. That's when snapback tariffs are reimposed, and it cuts both ways on the US and China for mainland equities and also for the exchange rate for dollar yuan. What do you think is going to be the net reaction and impact?
Yeah, I think the market is pricing in an extension of another 90 days. Right now we're seeing, some sort of vague framework being agreed upon, but there's no concrete sort of bullet points we can take away from the meetings. So one shouldn't be too surprised to see extension being granted once again, and China is controlling the pace as well, because China this time around is using its strategic reserve on the rare earth supply, right, to control the process of the meetings. So I think, if there's no extension, then I think the market would be negatively surprised. But that shouldn't be the base case scenario.
How I recall when I was in Beijing during the two sessions and the US and China were really at each other's throats in terms of the trade and the tariff war. The message from China was one of resilience. We had the DeepSeek effect. We had this commitment from the leadership to stimulate the economy and to underwrite 5% economic growth. Do you think that narrative is still holding?
Yeah, I think in the first half, the Chinese GDP has been beating expectations, 5.2%. So I think that gives the leadership some confidence, to hold on to its policy intent to the second half. And I think, the DeepSeek moment is still ongoing, right? So right now, we're seeing new tech sectors sprucing up from China. For example, many of the IT companies have their own large language model, and also the robotic sector has been doing really well as well. So I think that gives the leadership a lot of confidence. But having said that, if there's no policy, right? So if you look into the second half, then you probably going to see consumption continue to decline, and also the foreign demand for Chinese goods probably going to wane as well. Because for the first 6-7 months, the rest of the world has been stocking up on Chinese exports, right? So one shouldn't be too surprised to see waning domestic and foreign demands for Chinese exports. And if so, then one shouldn't be too surprised to see second half GDP growth would decline substantially into the second half.
So what do we do with this information in terms of allocating across the spread of Greater China markets? Do we continue to take the southbound route, and 8 shares, is that the best way in? I know your market in Hong Kong has been performing quite strongly.
Yes.
We've seen records there. Do we take a punt on A shares or even Taiwan, despite the confusion over 100% semiconductor tariffs and how that could affect heavyweights like TSMC?
Yes, well, I think this year, one important change that has been happening is that, the market liquidity has been very strong, right? So if you look at the southbound flows, it has been well over last year's total flow already. Now we're only, 7 months into the year. And also the Chinese central bank has been injecting large amount of liquidity into the system through the reverse repo manipulation. So since year-to-date, since the beginning of the year, we probably get almost 10 trillion yuan worth of a reverse repo injection into the system, right? So there's abundant liquidity in the system. So I think for traders, for us, fund managers, we probably not too concerned about the weakening fundamentals. As long as there's enough liquidity system, there will be speculation and there will be trending up for the market.
How strong then is the investment case with regard to the China internet stocks, everything from Baidu, Ali and Tencent?
Yeah, I think Tencent has been doing well, right? So Tencent has been rising well above 500 yuan per share, 500 Hong Kong dollars per share. I think Ali is sort of struggling a little bit. I think for the internet giants, they are very different from the US tech companies in the sense that, these are still, primarily e-commerce companies. For example, Tencent is a game, internet game company. Over 50% of the revenue is from gaming. I think Ali is trying to venture into AI, but I think so far, its large language model is good, but probably nowhere near, what we can obtain from the US players. So I think, people tend to want to compare the Chinese tech companies with the US tech company, but they are not nearly comparable. So I would say that this year, besides the internet companies, which has given some decent returns, people should look into, for example, biotech companies and also the robotic segments. These two segments have been doing really, really well. And also, we're seeing money continue to pile in high dividend yield stocks as well. So, despite a weakening property sector, the Chinese banks are still doing really well this year.
How very quickly, have you got a line on TSMC? Does it remain the premium AI name, or are there headwinds that we need to be mindful of when it comes to the IP theft at TSM and also this tariff threat? A lot of confusion around 100% tariffs on semis.
Yeah, well, I think, there's an exemption, right? So if TSMC is putting money into the US and manufacturing its chips in the US, then it could be, getting an exemption. I think TSMC is still a premier name in the sense that it's the only game in town, right? So in terms of high-end chips. So I think, despite the negative headline, people shouldn't be too sort of given up on TSMC just yet.
Hao, we'll leave it there. Always a pleasure catching up with you. Thank you very much indeed. Very comprehensive insights. Hao Hong there from Lotus Asset Management. Right, moving on to Southeast.